All right. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming back to my channel. I'm Megan, the faithful fibromyalgia warrior. My fibro pain today is actually quite minimal, so it is a good fibromyalgia day. For those of you who do not struggle with this condition, it sucks, but every day is different. Now, since I have been eating a carnivorous way of eating, since I've been a carnivore, and even starting with being keto, I found that my fibromyalgia pain was actually reduced dramatically. I started eating this way 2.5 years ago, and end of June, I would say, of 2020. That's when I began keto, and then I very quickly, well, fairly quickly, within a couple of weeks of trying keto, I then swapped out to carnivore. Um, I I kept my carbs, if you will, the ones that can come from non-starchy vegetables, those cruciferous, deadly, anti-IBS vegetables that I wasn't eating anyways, and the few bits that were low carb that I was trying to eat, I quickly cut out. So I was basically carnivore as of July of 2020. I am currently, just so you guys can see, if you didn't see the thumbnail at the beginning, it's hard to tell, but I am 120 pounds, which I believe puts me at about 53 kilos. I don't know what that is in stone. I'm not very good with, I've lived in the UK for 13 years with my husband and our sons, but I still, it's crazy. I still do weights in pounds, but measurements I only can think of in centimeters. I don't think in inches. I do know that while I think my waist is about 68 or 69 centimeters, but I know for a fact it's 27 inches and my hips are 37 inches. But other measurements I think of in metric, not imperial. Go figure. Anyways, so today I just wanted to share a little bit with you guys. I hope this is helpful. When I talk about my healing from bulimia, and I consider myself to be in recovery, not that I'm not tempted by negative thoughts, because up until a few days ago, I would still find myself often checking in the mirror at home to make sure I looked okay. Was I still looking slender? Was I still looking thin? Was any secret weight going on? So those obsessive needs for me to make sure I was looking as thin and as carnivore as possible, I guess, is the best way I can think of it. Um, you know, what I've realized, and I should have understood this, and I didn't, but it to me, it's kind of interesting how everything ties into everything else. So what I mean by that is this. I've been an anxious person since early childhood. Now, I think my parents would have called it a worry wart, borrowing trouble, making mountains out of molehills, as it were. Back then, and I was born in 1972. So when I was a kid, when I was, say, I clearly remember struggling with worry, with anxiety, as we would now call it, oh, probably since I was 5 or 6. And that was always a part of my life. I used to say, well, maybe it's because we moved a lot when I was growing up, but I think it was more than that. It was for whatever reason, and I don't say this as a blame thing because there was no blame involved, but I constantly worried about everything. What would everybody think of me? Would I make friends? Would they like me? Would I be okay? Would I ever be, cool? Would I ever fit in with other people? And so for me, I found it easiest to try to go along with what everyone else did, what everyone else thought, with what everyone else said. I didn't like to rock the boat. I was always the negotiator. I was always the peacemaker. I have two younger siblings, and they're 15 months apart. So on car rides, I was often asked to sit in the middle so they wouldn't fight with each other. I was kind of like the mediator between them, if you will. And again, that's not a blame thing. That was just, I'm the oldest of three. That just ended up becoming my role. And somewhere along the way, I felt like that's where I was in life. And I just had to go along with everything else, just accept what people said, go with it, don't challenge it. Now, this is hot water, by the way, in case you're wondering. I did have a nice cappuccino earlier today when I was out. I'm good now. I just wanted something hot to drink because it's like 3 degrees Celsius, which I know is really not that bad compared to most of, if not all of Canada right now, and a good part of the States. But I'm acclimatized to the UK. So when it gets below 10 degrees, I notice it. Anyhow, my point being is I never really found my way out of my binging and purging, my guilt, my restricting, and that ongoing recycling pattern. That was all part of what was happening in my brain, all those negative thoughts, because as I've shared in a couple of my other videos, at least one of them for sure, is even if you start to eat in a way that's considered to be normal, at least in front of people, that doesn't mean that those thoughts are gone. It doesn't mean that those negative thoughts don't never pop up again. And in fact, in my case, because I never made myself face them head on, they were just lurking in the background. Now, when I was injured, what was this now? Almost 9 years ago, actually. Yeah, it'll be 9 years ago this March when I suffered my spinal disc injury. My very first thought wasn't, I wonder if I'll ever be able to walk properly again. I wonder if I'll ever be able to go jogging on the treadmill again. My first thought was, oh my goodness, I'm going to get fat because I can't go. I was learning how to do roller derby, which is really cool. And that's not where I got the injury. It happened when I was leaned over, pulling stuff out of the tumble dryer, laundry, of course. And it just went, the disc just bulged out and I couldn't stand up straight. So my first worry was, well, if I can't exercise for at least the next 6 weeks, which is, everyone figured because that's typically how long the body takes to heal itself. There was far more damage than I realized. But even 6 weeks without being able to get to the gym, I was panicked. I had always had a love-hate with my body, okay? I always did. And it didn't matter, even with my crash diets, all the pills, all the shakes, even when I was restricting, I did lose a bit of weight. But even at that point, I couldn't see it. And that's the insanity, is anybody who's ever struggled with an eating disorder, full blown, or some kind of disordered eating, that it doesn't matter what's in front of us as far as in the mirror, we see something different. I could have been, I could have dropped 30 pounds and I would never have seen it. I could have, dropped a dress size and I wouldn't even be able to accept it. I wouldn't have believed it. And I spent so many years wearing baggy clothes or clothes that were saggy and loose fitting. Yes, they were comfortable, but they did nothing to make me look thinner. And that's the other bit, is I thought I could hide behind these baggy clothes and nobody could see all my wobbly, squashy bits. Now, I've only just recently learned how to love some of those parts of me. I'm 50, meaning I'll be 51 in August of this year. I've had 2 children. Both were born by C-section. And I've only been doing carnivore for 2.5 years. So what does that mean? Well, I have lost since my heaviest weight, which was back in end of May of 2020 when I was 200 pounds. I've lost 80 pounds simply by cutting out carbs and eating animals for their meat. I tried organs, I tried liver a couple of different times. The last time I tried to make it, I ended up with food poisoning through my own fault, but still, I am in no rush to have it. And to be honest with you, I don't need it. When I tried it, it's because I was craving it, so I had some, and it felt great, and then I was done, right? I ended up with food poisoning, which was then followed by a really bad kidney infection and a UTI. So I'm avoiding organs for right now. But why did I make this video? Because the scariest thing for me has not been going keto, ketovore, carnivore. Um, that was a challenge. And yes, my husband and my sons both thought I was a complete whack job until they saw the fact that my weight was coming off. Until I shared with them my brain fog from my fibromyalgia pain was clearing up. Until it was evident that I was actually able to move a little bit more. I was able to do some very gentle yoga bridges and some stretches that helped with my lower back pain that I could not do before. For me to get down onto the floor in a yoga mat and lay on my back with my knees bent and my pelvis tucked in, I couldn't even do that before. Not even that. That hurt too much. And I was able to start doing these things, which was fantastic. My pain was dramatically reduced, my inflammation significantly down. And I thought those were the scariest things to face. But what I came to realize was that the scariest thing for me was trying to accept the fact that I actually have changed. In my head, I was still stuck in my head as being 200 pounds, as being obese, as being inflamed, as being, um, you know, filled with pain and limited mobility, and any sort of movement would jeopardize everything. Because in my head, that's what I was convinced was the case. And that's why I think it took me from the time of losing the majority of the weight I lost between July and I would say early to mid-November of 2020. I easily lost the first 60 to 65 pounds in that time frame just by cutting out everything else. And I was feeling so great and I was feeling so amazing as I was doing all this that I just kept going. And so that wasn't what scared me. The fact that my husband and my kids thought I was a nut job did not scare me. But the scariest thing for me was to have to accept I'm actually healing. I'm actually getting better. And even my scars from my two C-sections, they're fading. Now, I don't care if they ever go away fully or not. I consider them, those are my battle scars. Those are my badges of honor from having had two kids. And so if they never fully go away, I'm okay with that. But the things that I thought would never change have changed. And, there are some great YouTubers out there who will talk about the fact that our brains are often slow to catch up with our bodies, especially when we switch from a standard Western diet and eating processed crap to eating things that are good for us. Go Keto with Casey. That's Casey Durango. Talks about it often. She's got a couple of videos at least about how it's our thinking that's the last to change. And for me, that was scary because it was a comfort zone for a long time. It was, well, I can't change. Well, I'm going to be fat forever. Well, I have this, I have that. And what I found, even just a few days ago, was once I stopped focusing on what I was or who I used to be, I realized I'm actually getting healthier. See, I used to live in this panic mode that all the weight that I've lost, it's going to just come back overnight. If I give in, I'm hungry. So if I eat, but you know, it's a different time of the day, well, that's going to throw everything off. And I realized a few things. The biggest one was that I wasn't surrendered to God and his plan to bring me health. And I should have been, not just the physical improvements. If I never completely reverse my medical ailments, that's okay because I'm giving it everything I can. Maybe I will. Who knows? In 10 years' time, I might be able to walk to town all by myself and I may not need to use my electric wheelchair because by then, hopefully, the disc that bulged will finally retract fully back. Right now, it's back a bit, but it is still causing great irritation to my spine, to the nerve in my spine. Um, and right now, I'm dealing with irritation and inflammation of my sacroiliac joint, and I'm hoping that will eventually heal. I know that the nerves are hard. It's hard for the nerves to heal themselves. Not that it can't happen, and you know what? God can do anything that He wants. But I know that I might be looking at years of that healing. I'm only 2.5 years in. And I had to remind myself that some of the people who have completely reversed their conditions, they did that over a period of time. It didn't happen within the first few weeks or even the first few months. May not have even happened within the first few years. I look at someone like Kelly Hogan, who has been a zero carb carnivore for, I think, 13 years or so, who said that it's only now that she's finding certain things that she thought, might never heal are starting to heal up. The body is healing up, for example, evidence of the fact that she's had kids. Now, that took time for the skin to tighten up. I'm not going to go the route of plastic surgery. I don't need to. But even now, the belly muscles are tightened up enough that unless I'm bloated, it's pretty flat tummy, you know. So for me, what was scariest is to admit to you guys, you know what? Up until a few days ago, I would refuse to wear this sweater because it actually fits me properly. Um, because I really truly am a size 10 UK and or a size 6 in North America. And I never thought I would get to that point. I've never been that size in my entire life, I don't think. I don't think. Except maybe when I was in early puberty, like maybe when I was 13 or 14. And after that, no. Um, and so the reason I wanted to share this, and I'm sorry, I meant to come on yesterday, but actually, whew, sorry, but yesterday I had other stuff going on, and so I wasn't live. I was busy making a pre-recorded video. And one of the things I'm trying to do is when I feel the least like going live is probably when I need to go on the most because I'm left with my thoughts. I'm left with the negative talk in my head. And when I know that you guys might be watching and hopefully tuning in, maybe struggling with similar things, it's sort of like, yeah, you know what? I should do this. And not because I'm anyone spectacular. Um, I'm one of God's creations, as we all are. And so, from that point of view, yes, I'm amazing. We are all amazing because God made all of us. But what I've realized is just because I may not be, I'm not a certified nutritionist, I do not claim to be. This is what's worked for me, truly, so far. And this is something I intend to do for the rest of my life, which is eat the animals that God created for us. For those of you who are Christians like I am, who have, a belief in God, you refer back to the book of Genesis in the first chapter when he's creating the world and the universe, he very specifically lays out his plans, which is first he creates the seeds and the plants, then he creates the not the humans, the animals that will live in the air and in the sea and on the land, and then he creates humans. And it's clearly pointed out that we are sort of the overlords of the animals, of all the creatures. And if you have any doubt that we are meant to eat animals, I would refer you to Genesis chapter 9, where Noah is reminded, by the way, these animals were created for us to eat. You know, we are over all the plants, all the animals. The animals are to eat the plants. We're supposed to eat the animals. The ruminants are the best. Why? Because in God's wisdom, He created ruminant animals, which I believe are mainly hooved. So we're talking beef. So cows, oxen, bison. We're also talking lambs, zebras, antelope, deer. Not all things we can easily get access to, but beef generally, yes. So whether you can get access to lamb, whether you can get access to beef from cows, whether you can get access to venison, ruminant animals have multiple stomachs. So when they eat the grasses and the grains and the cereals, they can break it all down completely. And what's left is they've got muscle meat, and that also helps them to add fat to the muscles on their skeleton. So when we eat, we get the protein and the fat built in. Win-win. If you don't believe in a Christian God, and you believe in a God of a different religion, or to borrow from the 12-step programs, if you believe in a different higher power, and that's anything that you accept as being bigger than you, because you've realized that in order to get through this life, in order to find recovery for and not just for bulimia or anorexia, not just for disordered eating or eating disorders or food addictions such as carbs, processed foods, and refined sugars, not just to get help managing through life, but in my personal experience, along with eating disorders and food addictions, anxiety for me and depression. And which came first? In my case, the anxiety was always there. Like I said, since I was a small kid, always anxious, always anxious. I remember my parents telling me that I was somebody who's always wore her heart on her sleeve. And so you always knew where I stood with things. I was always very emotional, and I easily got my feelings hurt. And I reached a point where I just wanted to do whatever I had to make everyone else happy. I was a people pleaser. Didn't matter if I agreed with something or not. I just wanted to be accepted. And to my detriment, I felt like people wouldn't accept me if I wasn't a certain size, if I wasn't a certain weight. And at that time, I did not understand that those things, of course, didn't matter. And that not only did they not matter, that my way of going about getting these things was wrong and were counterproductive, and in fact made everything worse. So I not only had to learn this the hard way, but I really came face to face with it to start with, 2.5 years ago, when I started losing the weight and I started to obsess. I found myself obsessing again. I was counting all my macros as best I could to the millimicrogram. And I was working out in exacting details. How many calories can I burn if I'm sitting out in the sun, if I'm working on my tan, if I'm getting my vitamin D, if I'm sweating while I'm outside? How does that look? All right, so I can eat this and I'll burn it off. And it hit me by August of that year that I was starting to have those same obsessive patterns, even if I wasn't binging, purging, um, and restricting. I was under eating and I was feeling guilt constantly. And I was trying to do exactly what everyone else did, but I'm not everyone else. And I found myself in that same cycle. My anxiety through the roof. Now, I was given antidepressants back in 2015 when I was finally diagnosed with fibromyalgia. The idea being, yes, it would help with my depression, having to accept the reality that my life was going to be different. It was definitely going to be impacted. It was no longer going to be anything like it once was. And it was in January of 2016, well, actually, February 2016, I stopped working. We moved house. We moved from Norfolk down to Essex, near Colchester. And it finally hit me that life was no longer going to be the same. And even though the antidepressants helped level out my depression, the problem was they never actually helped as far as the anxiety. And I found out after going to an eating disorder clinic, I got referred by the GP to speak to a psychologist at an eating disorder clinic in Norfolk. Just we used to live in Norwich. And the psychologist told me that actually what was triggering, in her opinion, what triggered my bulimia was out of anxiety. And it makes sense because when you feel like your whole world is out of your control, but the one thing you can control is what you put in or you don't put into your body, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it also, for me, triggered all the emotional response of guilt, of feeling unworthy, of feeling like a failure. I couldn't stick to any diet. Um, I was on the diet pills that worked for a few days and then they stopped working. So I binged and then I purged and then I restricted, all while trying to work full time, all while dealing with um, the fact that my disc had bulged out and there was nothing to be done other than let it hopefully heal on its own, in constant pain and constant agony, in a stressful job as an administrator, and finding that not only was that happening, but the medication that I was on for pain, the gabapentin for the fibromyalgia to help with the tingly nerve pain in my arms and legs, and the cocodamol, which, if you're for those of you who are in Canada or the US, is equal to taking like a Tylenol free with codeine. Basically, that level of prescription. I was at maximum doses for all of it. And by 2015, a year and a half after the initial injury, um, also, in the summer of 2015, being told that no, I did not have carpal tunnel. I had osteoarthritis in both my hands and my wrists and thumbs. All of that was in around my head, and I could not find peace. Now, I was not eating anything close to a carnivore diet. I was eating the standard Western diet with a lot of baked goods, a lot of treats because, well, life is crap now, so I deserve it. A lot of guilt, a lot of restricting, still some purging. Yeah. So I was at the worst of my cycle. And I've had some bad times with being bulimic and with all these addictions to carbs, sugar, seed oils. I knew they weren't great for me because I mean, hell, if they were good for me, then I'd be losing weight and not going up and down with each time getting more and more weight put on. So I was miserable and I didn't know what to do. And you would have thought, as a Christian, that I might have, prayed or somehow contacted God or, you know, said, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do. But no, I didn't do that because I figured I knew better. and I was not walking close with God at that time. My faith was kind of like I've said before, it was like the flickering low light of, like a little tea light candle. Hadn't quite burned out, but it was really low. And so it was going to take another 5 years of unbelievable pain and frustration and also hating how I looked. And you know what? I tried to convince myself that I was okay, that I still looked beautiful, that, I love my body. And you know what? My husband was still in love with me, and he never stopped. And my kids still love me, and they never stopped. However, I did not love me. I didn't love me. I would try to read myself scriptures, how God talks about, how the psalmist, Psalm, I think it's 145, about how we are wonderfully and fearfully made. And I believe that to be true. We all are. But I wasn't happy with where I was at. I thought in order to be happy, and yes, there's the fact we have to love ourselves through everything, but in spite of the antidepressants and in spite of all the pain medication, which, by the way, one of the side effects of my pain medication is weight gain. And I was almost at a point where I was willing to suffer chronic but acute pain so that I could avoid putting on weight. But I didn't. And so for me, the scariest thing for me was to have my picture taken. I didn't want to be in photos. I didn't. I didn't. It's crazy. I went through this period where I thought, yeah, I'm going to love myself. Now, I have since learned that to truly love myself means I have to want to have good health for myself. That is truly loving myself. Um, that does not mean anybody who is carrying extra weight or anybody who is fat, anybody who's stuck in that point of life, that doesn't mean they do not deserve love. Of course they do. We are all God's creation. Everybody deserves love. But for me, what I came to realize is that loving myself meant I've got to get a hold of this. I cannot keep treating my body this way. I have to be able to love myself enough to find good health. And if that happens, then I can hopefully find good mental health, good, emotional health, and good spiritual health, and really get back to walking with God because I really wasn't. Now, a lot of that was because my brain fog was so bad. It was like trying to find, I don't know, trying to find one faulty match in a book of matches without being able to test them all. Good luck, right? You know that there's something faulty there, but you can't get to it. That was how I felt. And I was always, anytime somebody talked about needing to go on a diet, or even my husband, like it doesn't affect him. He's like, yeah, you know what? I've gotten a bit fat. I got to lose weight. I got to get into the gym. I got to eat better. I could never say that to myself because it terrified me, because it brought all the negative thoughts back and it set me off on this massive down spiral of bulimia, of the addiction of food, of the binging and the purging and the guilt and restricting and rinse and repeat. And so when I finally reached a point through COVID when I realized, you know what? If nothing else, people who are overweight and obese and carrying too much visceral fat, especially, are at higher risk of, obvious as we know, heart conditions and prediabetes and diabetes, but also it was believed, and I suspect it's true, that we're at a higher risk of catching things and having severe consequences like COVID. And I didn't want that. And so when the end of May came, I had long stopped getting on a scale because at that point, The last time I weighed myself at the beginning of May, I was 200 pounds. And by the end of May, oh, I'm sure I must have put on at least another 5 or 10. And I just was not going to weigh myself. I was so devastated because I was restricting. I decided, nope, I'm not going to eat fast food. I'm not going to give myself any treats. Yes, I got to lose weight, but I don't know what to do. I can't exercise. All I could see were the hurdles. All I saw were the hurdles, right? Never saw what was possible. All I could see was the obstacles, which I don't know if that's a talent or not, but it's something I seem to be good at a lot of the time. All I could see was the things I couldn't do. And I wasn't willing to figure out what I could do. And so, you know, as I've shared before, my sister-in-law, my husband's sister, had gone on a paleo diet, I guess a year or two previous, because she wanted to reverse, if she could, she wanted to reverse her Hashimoto's diagnosis. She did not want to have to take thyroid medication. So she followed it, did it for the 30 days or whatever was recommended, and she lost weight. And she reversed all her symptoms. So she recommended that to my husband, who suggested it to me. We both agreed that we would do it. So I put it on my Kindle. The agreement was I would read it. All he wanted to know was what he had to do, what he had to eat, and that's what we would do. So we did. Very quickly, it became apparent that while paleo was helping him, it was absolutely the worst thing for me. Lots of nuts and seeds, and dark leafy greens, all of which are absolute no-nos for IBS, whichever type you have. And in general, not things people should eat because they are extremely hard to break down. Animals, especially those with 3 stomachs, can eat those things because they can break them down. Humans cannot. That's why, sorry to be a bit rude, but if you eat those things, you'll notice quite a bit of it ends up in your poop. And that's why, because we don't easily digest or absorb those things. Never mind the fact that on top of the IBS, I had a very leaky gut, and those were a recipe for disaster, which it took me 3 weeks to figure that out. And the one good thing was I had already cut out sugar, dairy, and gluten and soy were not things I consumed anyways. So I thought to myself, there's got to be something better. I went on YouTube, as everyone does, and I discovered Dr. Beckman. I also discovered Dr. Fung, learned about intermittent fasting, low carb keto. I also found other videos, thankfully, that I also discovered ketovore and carnivore, because when you go through the rabbit hole, it led me to Dr. Ken Berry and his lovely wife, Nisha Salisbury, who is a nurse. And they shared their story and what they've been doing. And they themselves had gone from paleo to ketovore / carnivore. And I thought, this is it. I can do this. And so I started it. And that's when the weight really came off. That's when it took me a couple of weeks to realize, but I was so locked in my head that I was always going to have pain, and I always felt the pain, and therefore the pain stayed. And I realized a lot of the time, what we tell ourselves becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the more I told myself that, no, I was just imagining things, I hadn't lost the weight, I really wasn't a smaller size, I still had to hide myself with baggy clothes, and I would always be stuck with bulimia. Now, this happened around August, beginning of September of 2020. And not coincidentally enough, my husband and I had been talking about how, we got to find a virtual faith community. Let's get back to that. Let's get closer to God. Let's, reignite that faith. And what I realized was at that point as well is like, yeah, I'm on board. Let's do it because I'm ready for God. I cannot do this myself. And once I had decided that, a lot of the anxiety started to ease up. I did not get a stronger prescription. I didn't get any additional medication whatsoever. I just realized I needed to start to pray. I needed to accept the fact that I can't fix everything by myself, and that's okay. But what I also found over the last 2.5 years is that as much as I have progressed in recovery, there were still things that I had not dealt with. And that's where the whole idea that the mind is slow to catch up to the body, that's where that comes in. Because there are certain things I refuse to wear or that I bought that were the right size, but I was convinced made me look fat, or my belly's all poochy, or my butt's too big, or and meanwhile, no, that isn't the case. That's what was in my head, right? Those are those lies that Satan likes to bring up and kick around because if we doubt in the fact that God is helping free us, well, then we're not free. And as much as I got back my deep faith and love for God, as much as I've been able to enjoy my time praying and studying His Word and all of those amazing things and just appreciating all the blessings in my life, the very last thing I found to be super scary was to wear clothes that actually fit me properly and not immediately think, oh my gosh, I can't wear that. I look fat. There are certain things I don't wear simply because they don't suit me. That's one thing. But it's not because, you know, I'm this massive house. I am not that person. And I know it seems kind of odd to talk about, perhaps, but for me at least, that has been the biggest part of my healing and my continued recovery as far as bulimia is concerned. As far as why am I motivated to binge, to purge, to feel guilty and restrict? Why is it that I feel, oh, I better start working out. I've got to do what everyone else does. So I have this massive toned body and a six pack and abs. And you know what? I'm not at that point. I probably never will be. If I can do some yoga stretches when my lower back bothers me, fantastic. But I don't need to do other things. I don't have to be anyone else. And if I never have a six pack, that's okay because my scars from having two pregnancies, two healthy, wonderful boys who are grown now, well, then, amen for that, right? But the scariest thing for me was to actually wear clothes that fit and just not hide behind baggy clothes over imperfections that I imagine are there. But quite frankly, even if they were, they don't matter. Why? Because my overall health has had such a vast improvement. There's no comparison. Yes, obviously, eating the fatty cuts of meat has been a massive game changer, without a doubt. But it wasn't just that, because I had lost almost all of the weight, by the end of October of 2020. And yet, my head, I was still struggling with all these negative thoughts, all this negative self talk that I just couldn't get rid of. And the meat alone isn't what changed that. So for me, I have found that eating a carnivorous diet has been so massive in my overall health. Okay. Am I saying that I'm ready to come off all my pain medication? No, I'm not. I'm not because I'm not done healing. I hope that a day will come where that's possible. And if it's God's will and I carry on eating the way I'm supposed to, the way He intended, it's entirely possible. There may come a day, like I said, maybe 10 years from now, who knows? Maybe I'll even be able to walk freely without crutches, without my electric wheelchair for more than just a few feet, say from the office into the kitchen. Right now, I'm just excited that I'm able to actually sit pretty straight up and down for more than a couple of minutes, which may not seem like much, but for somebody who, because of my disc injury, like I've shared in the other video, my right hip bone was 2 inches higher than my left hip bone because of just how it went out, the angle I was at. To even be able to sit up straighter for a few minutes at a time, I'm already strengthening my lower back. That's huge for me because I wasn't able to do that. I'm still, slightly uneven, if you will. But hopefully that's going to change. And absolutely eating a carnivore diet has made a massive difference. Why? Because the carbs and the processed sugars and the seed oils and all the crap is not causing inflammation like it used to in my joints. And so I'm able to sit up straighter, stand up a little straighter for a bit longer than I used to. Little stages, right? It doesn't happen instantly. It took one really, really weird twisting movement to throw my whole body out of whack. But from that point, it took me 6 years to reach the level of inflammation and pain that I did. So to expect all of that to go away in only 2.5 years, kind of ridiculous. Okay, so that's the one thing. But I have made myself determined. I made myself determined. I have told myself, you are going to take pictures of yourself in clothes that fit and occasionally post them to say, this is what I look like. Why? I'm forcing myself to face my negative thoughts because I want to be able to see what's in the mirror. Yeah, doesn't match what's in my head. And that is, in my experience personally, and I think it's probably similar for other people who also struggle with eating disorders or even just disordered eating, even if it's not a full blown diagnosed disorder. One of the challenges is being able to say, right, what's in the mirror is reality. What's not in the mirror, what's in my head is not what's real. What's in front of me is what's real. So when I take pictures, I'm forcing myself to say, you know what? This is who I am. And it makes me accept where I've gotten to. So that's what I wanted to share. That for me has been the scariest thing, is to not filter in any way. Just take, as you'll see at the beginning of the video, that's me today. And it makes me go, oh, right, that's what I look like. I am not it's not what how am I trying to say it? Sorry. What's there is who's actually me. I'm not the person I often think I am in my head. Who I am on that photo is actually who I am. And, even the fact that I could stand up for a picture without a crutch, without leaning on anything, that's where I've come to. And absolutely would not get there without the carnivore diet. No way. But physically speaking, however, if I was not walking with God, well, I would never have reached that point mentally and emotionally and spiritually to say, you know what, actually, I have changed. I am not this overweight person who is bloated, who is full of depression, anxiety, and all this stuff. Don't get me wrong. I have to pray for serenity every single day, repeatedly, because it's really easy to get anxious. If you're someone who deals with generalized anxiety disorder, like I do, the littlest things cause me anxiety that shouldn't. And so even right now, I'm thinking, oh, is anyone even going to see this live stream? Is anyone even going to care? Is anyone going to even be helped? I have to hope that it does help you guys, that if you're struggling at the same place that I was until recently, you're not alone. I hope this is helpful. That's why I do this, that the diet is important, but I've learned it is not everything. That if I wasn't walking with God, for calmness, for all of those things, the diet itself wouldn't have been enough to get me to this point. The diet will help heal physically, but if we're not working on healing emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, for however you want to take that, whether it's your belief in the God of Jesus or a God of your own understanding, as they say in this 12-step programs, Mother Nature, anything bigger than you, whatever it is, if that part of it isn't happening, if you're not doing that side of work as well, then I suspect you'll find, like I did, that the diet alone is not enough for sustainable improvements and change and progression. So that's it for me for today. I hope you guys have a fantastic Friday. It's been amazing for me, just a beautiful day. Yes, it's only been about 4 degrees Celsius, but the sun's been out. I will take it. On a January day here in England, I will take that every day. Thank you so much, guys, for all of your incredible support, all your comments, all of your likes, all of your views. I just want to get the news out that whether you do the full lion diet, which is just muscle meat, salt, and water, or whether you're doing a carnivorous diet, which is for me mainly ground beef with some bacon and egg yolks and a little bit of salt. That's the majority of what I eat. Sometimes it's a bit of brisket, sometimes it might be a little bit of lamb, sometimes it might be a bit of sausage. And I also include egg yolks. So animals and some of their products, dairy, if you can tolerate it. Like I had a cappuccino today, but that's the extent of the dairy I'm going to take in. Whatever level you are, if you're eating the meats and their products as God intended, I hope that helps. That's all I want to do, share how great, yes, this diet is. But in order to face my ultimate fear, that requires walking with God and having faith and trusting that He's going to help me face those fears and turn the negative self talk that I know for sure is coming from Satan into realizing, you know what, this is not reality. What I have here running through my brain, oh, you're not good enough. You're still fat. You'll never get there. You're not worth it. All of those negative thoughts. And it not just people who have eating disorders or addictions. I think a lot of us have those thoughts. Those are not the thoughts from God. And learning to walk with God has helped me to deal with that. And again, if you have a belief in a different God, that's okay. Whatever helps you. I hope this is encouraging. That is the only reason I do this. I just want to share what's been helping me and how I've been trying to change with as many people as possible. Because let's face it, I think in the world we live in, isn't that better to have positivity than not? To have really good health based on truth, such as eat animal meat. By the way, you do not have to eat the organs if you don't want to, not required for health. If you don't believe me, check out videos by Bart Kay, very respected scientist, and he knows what he's talking about. So watch his videos and you'll see why they're not required. You can also check out the videos of Dr. Anthony Chafee. Again, if you like them and you want to eat them now and then, go ahead, be my guest, but you don't have to. Right? And also, if you want some ideas of which ones might be less organy to eat, you might want to check out some of those videos by Rebecca Heichman at Tailored Keto Health, because she's got some great ideas and recipes. But as for me, I'm going to stick with fatty ground beef. I'm working my way up to 23% fat from 20. So it's going to be a slow process, but so far so good, with a couple of egg yolks, a little bit of salt, and a few pieces of fried up bacon, all kind of jumbled up together. Delicious. And honestly, when I have that at breakfast, it keeps me going. It keeps me energized. It's training my body to take the stored fat that I have and burn that. So that's always a good thing. But I hope this helps. Not only to give carnivore a try if you aren't quite sure, or at least a heavy meat-based diet. If you're on the fence or you're not sure about it, give it a try. It is so worthwhile. Um, Not just because I lost 80 pounds. I mean, that for me, that was a big deal. Again, coming out of an eating disorder, being able to actually lose weight, fantastic. But it wasn't just that that freed me from the eating disorder. See, the way I like to look at it is God helped me find keto, which then became carnivore, so I could heal, not just, with my issues with I got to lose weight. No, it was God helped me heal physically by, yes, I lost a buttload of weight, which was amazing. I never thought that would happen or that I'd ever be able to do that. It helped get my thyroid under control. It helped definitely get my triglycerides down, which were through the roof. I reversed my early onset non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. All my blood work is in normal to good range, which is amazing. But beyond that, with my thyroid, learning how to get my thyroid functioning properly, my eyebrows are starting to grow back. My eyelashes don't come out every day. My hair is actually quite nice. It's not all like straw and falling out every time I brush it, which is amazing. My gums don't get sensitive and bleed every month like they used to, which is amazing. My fingernails, the enamel on my fingernails and toenails have actually been healing, and they weren't all cracked and ridged anymore. So just that alone was worthwhile. On top of the fact that I was able to actually figure out when I was really hungry and when I wasn't. I was putting actual good nutrition into my body that it was using and not all the other crap that I was consuming. So that was amazing. I've been able to treat my body as the temple like God asks us to. We're if we have the spirit dwelling in us, then shouldn't we be looking after ourselves, right? So I was able to learn to love myself enough to get healthy. That for me was true love. And I found that I didn't have low-lying headaches every day. I didn't feel like I had food caught in my throat or up in my chest like I often did with my IBS. That I'm found that the symptoms are basically gone unless, if I slip up and I have more than 1 or 2 cups of coffee in a day, then, that's not good. But I haven't done that now for several days, which is great, almost a week. Yay me. But I want people to know that God has blessed us with this way of eating. He laid it out in Genesis. And so for me, I totally know that, yeah, this absolutely is a blessing from God to eat the animal meats, to eat the eggs, or at least the yolks, to nourish our bodies so we can build muscle and be healthy and have some longevity and look after ourselves. And once that happened, and my brain fog is essentially non-existent. And now I'm able to face all of the mental challenges that I never could before. There was no way that I could ever look at myself and go, "Oh, I have changed." Like being able to wear clothes that actually fit me right instead of, "Oh, I'm not that. No, no, no. I'll never fit a small. I'm certain I'm still an extra large and don't take my picture." So being able to face those lies through a clear mind, amazing. God brought me to carnivore to help me clear my head and clear the crap and the inflammation out of my body so that I could then turn to Him again in my personal life experience. And whatever experience yours is, um, you know, it's a blessing. So that's why I want to share all this. I've rambled on for a bit now. For everybody who's checked up or checked in and watched, thank you so much. I'm going to try to live stream every day. I might try starting a little bit later just because of time zone differences. I hope you guys will tune in. Not sure what the topic will be next, but I look forward to seeing you guys on the next video. Thank you for your support. And if there's anybody that you think this might help, who is perhaps struggling with their disordered eating or eating disorders, I don't say this like it's a quick fix. It's not. It isn't. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of me having to pray through it and look at myself honestly as to why do I want to keep doing this? Yes, health benefits, but what's the other reason? And is that the only reason? Is it just to lose weight? In which case it's not sustainable. So why am I doing it? And as I came back to faith, as my faith went from that tiny little almost out flame of a tea light to the flickering flame of that's the pilot light in a furnace that is virtually never goes out unless you cut off the gas, or in other words, unless you die, in which case, that's done. But essentially where the faith will never go out. And I couldn't get there if I wasn't getting healthy first. And so both of those are blessings from God. I really hope that this can be helpful. I don't want to sound preachy. That is not my intention. Just so excited and so thankful to share all the ways that my life has been so blessed by God helping me see how we should be eating, and then being able to eat that way and seeing my health get so much better. So as I said, right now, I may not be running. I may not even be walking that far. But considering 2.5 years ago, I could barely walk to begin with, and only with a crutch, to not needing one through the house or when we go out mostly, I'd say that's a big victory. And I am so thankful for that. And just remember, if it took you years to get to the chronic pain or the injury, it's not going to reverse itself immediately. It will take time. But God did make our bodies in such a way that if we give it enough time and we take care of it and we nourish it, it can heal itself from almost anything, which is so cool. But I was willing to wear something that in the past I would never have even kept, because it's like, nope, makes me look fat. I'm not going to keep it. That old thought, that old brain. So keep me in your thoughts. It doesn't mean I will never struggle like that again, but it does mean that for today, I am not going to let it control my life. And each day is moment by moment. So I thank you all for all of your support and your love, for coming by, for stopping in. Feel free to leave comments, and please share this with anybody that you think it could help. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it was helpful in some way. And I'll see you guys on the next live stream and/or in the next pre-recorded video. Take care. I love you guys. See you soon.